and you're wondering, ugh, have I ever had a herpes outbreak and I just didn't know it? It's highly unlikely. Most primary outbreaks, which are first-time outbreaks, are significant. You usually have multiple sores on your genitals. You might also have pain with urination, swelling. You may have tailbone pain or leg pain. Some people even get fevers and chills, and it lasts for a long time. So it's unlikely that you've ever had a herpes outbreak without knowing it. But sometimes it happens. I sometimes diagnose women because they come in and think, ooh, I just cut myself shaving and I have a little sore on my vulva. And then when I test them, it actually comes back as herpes and they're surprised. The general rule of thumb is if you have a sore and you think it might be herpes, you need to get tested really quickly, because once the sore resolves or it's mostly healed over, that swab isn't going to come back positive. And while we can test blood for herpes, it doesn't necessarily mean that you had an outbreak. It could just mean that you're carrying the virus. So when should you get this blood test? The answer is very rarely. I pretty much never test for the HSV virus when I am screening people for routine STI screening, because even if it's in your bloodstream, it doesn't mean you're ever going to get an outbreak. In fact, most people don't. So all that information does is make people worried and confused. The one time I do think the blood work can be helpful is if you have had an outbreak but your partner hasn't. Because if you've had an outbreak and you have HSV1 and your partner also has antibodies in their blood to HSV1, then it is next to impossible for you to pass genital herpes onto your partner because they actually have the antibodies to fight off that virus. So how do you protect yourself and protect other people from herpes? First and foremost, if you have an active cold sore or an active genital lesion, avoid prolonged kissing, oral sex, anal sex, and vaginal sex. This will protect your partner from having that virus passed along for the most part. Unfortunately, there is something called asymptomatic shedding, which is when the virus sheds and there is no active sore to be seen. The good news about the herpes virus is that most of the time it's dormant, meaning it's sleeping. And when it's dormant, it cannot be passed along to anyone. Only when it's actively shedding, aka with asymptomatic shedding, unfortunately, or with active sores, then that's when it can be passed along. The other thing that's important is using condoms. Condoms protect most people from genital herpes, and it's especially important if you have an active lesion and you're still planning on having sex, which I would really encourage you not to do.